So, man, it's your big brother K-Rino. Look, it's really funny to me how this country works in a lot of ways. It's funny how nobodies are given the power to determine the fate of somebody's or people with real talent. And I'm speaking mainly on a principle right now. I'm speaking about how the Baseball Hall of Fame has denied Barry Bonds entry into the Hall of Fame yet again. And I think this is his last time. You only get so many times to be eligible to go in before they take you off the ballot for good and you out of there. But Barry Bonds was among a few. I think Roger Clemens was in that group. Um, we all know the history of Pete Rose, who got banned from baseball and has been kept out of the Hall of Fame for decades now because of gambling. Because I think he was betting on the games, and it's funny how hypocritical these cats are. Because the Baseball Hall of Fame, people who go into the hall in baseball are voted in by the writers. They're voted in by the sports writers, the journalists, the media who cover the games. And these are people who, in a lot of cases, most cases, they never played the game. They just have developed a certain level of tenure as sports writers. They've been writing. They only certain people get a vote. The ones who've been in the game for a long time, and these are the people who are given the responsibility or given the privilege of deciding who gets in the Hall of Fame and who doesn't. And that's very important because it's based on relationships that they had with the players when those players were playing. If they didn't like you, if you was a player who didn't just capitulate and kiss their butt when you step up to the podium, and if you just a player who didn't accept those stupid, disrespectful questions that they'll ask sometime in certain moments, then and you let them know about themselves, they don't like you. And Barry Bonds was one of those kind of guys. Now, I don't want y'all to get it twisted and think that, oh man, K-Rino, what you trying to say? You trying to condone the usage of steroids? You trying to say it's cool? See, they did, okay, allegedly they did steroids. Hey, let's say they did. Okay, cool. Because people say, man, they did. Okay, that's cool. All right, fine. Just like Pete Rose bet on the game, that's fine. But here's the hypocrisy in that. You have many people that are in the Hall of Fame right now that was on drugs, doing cocaine, especially in the 70s and 80s. You have many individuals who are in the Hall of Fame who are racist, open racist, especially when you go back to the early days, back in the Babe Ruth days, people like Ty Cobb and all these different cats. Baseball itself was set up to keep black people out. That's why it was a big deal when Jackie Robinson did what they call breaking the color barrier, and was the first black person to play in the major leagues. When you had all these different brothers in the Negro League like Josh Gibson and others who would have shattered records had they been allowed to play back in those days. And guess what? The racists knew that. That's why they kept him out, and they only allowed Jackie in because Jackie kind of fit a certain criteria that they felt was acceptable enough to let this Negro in, right? So it's a hypocrisy, big time. So I'm gonna give you that. Bonds did steroids. Even Roger Clemens, even Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire. Okay, cool. So you're keeping them out behind that when you got all these other people in there. You got some of the worst of the worst that are in the hall right now, and some of them don't even have the numbers that a Barry Bonds had, because Barry Bonds had Hall of Fame numbers before the alleged use even began. He could have quit playing long before he went to San Francisco and started playing ball. But this is the funny part, because there was a strike in baseball back in the 90s, and that strike hit baseball pretty hard to where it was like, psh, when it was over with, the fans were not really coming to the games. Like, I remember it clear. The fans wasn't coming to the game. They was kind of taking a hit. And two of the main culprits of the steroid era, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, they started knocking the ball out the park left and right. And they had this big race, I think in like 1998, where they was just every night, each one of them was hitting 2 home runs, 3 home runs. One was in first place, the other one was in first place. They were just back and forth, taking turns. And that regenerated the interest in baseball because everybody wanted to see what they were going to do every night. And the fans started coming back to the game because also it was other players in the league who was juicing. But you just hear about those two. But there was others in the league that was juicing, hitting 40, 50 home runs. And that basically ignited the revenue back in baseball and the interest back in baseball. Then Bonds came back a little later and broke the record. I think he hit 73 home runs. And that ignited the interest. So we can point to the point of, yeah, okay, it was wrong. But for somebody who love their bottom line so much, like these cats love their bottom line, y'all don't even take into account, well, these people helped save our game at a time when the game was hurting, the game was starving. But because we have bad relationships with these guys. And why are the writers in charge of that anyway? My view has always been, really in any sport, that the players going into the Hall of Fame, that should be voted on by other players, contemporaries, people that they played against, coaches that had the game plan against these guys and who understood how great these people really were. I think they should be the ones to vote. It should be a panel of those people. Nobody is more qualified to tell you how great a person was than the person who had to face and match up with them every night. Not some old dude with a pad in his hand writing a story. Or in these days on the internet writing a story, on the computer writing a story. It's crazy to me. A lot of these cats hadn't played ball since maybe Little League, if that. So it's a hypocrisy, man. And those grudges, that type of mentality doesn't just exist in sports. That's why I'm talking about this. These are principles of life. When you don't bow down and kiss they, you know what, and people don't like that. So they're like, I'll show him, I'll show her. Because I have the power to dictate how high they go or if they get in that spot. So you're giving power to a nobody who now has the ability to dictate the position of a somebody with real talent. Regardless if they did some things wrong in their career and all that. Why is Pete Rose not in the Hall of Fame? That's ridiculous, man. So if I was them, I wouldn't even care. I'd be like, you know what? That's cool. I would have been removed myself from the situation years and years ago. Wouldn't matter to me. And again, I'm not condoning any cheating, any type of getting the edge, but you got pitchers who scuff the ball up to get an edge on hitters, and a lot of them cats in the Hall of Fame right now. See? We go back to any sport. It's a guy named Adolph Rupp, who was a coach for Kentucky, I think, back in the days. One of the most racist dudes you ever want to come across in your life. He's in the Hall of Fame in basketball. He's revered. He has a stadium named after him. How soon we forget? Well, y'all leave y'all comments below. Tell me what y'all think about this topic. And whether you agree or you disagree, I want to hear from you. All right, this your big brother, K-Rino. Catch y'all later, man. Peace.